This is a recorded meeting, so the recording just began. Good morning. Just going to give a couple minutes to see if anyone else is coming in. Okay, it looks like we got everybody here so far, so welcome everybody back. If you've been here before, I think most of you know me. My name is Claire Rabbit. I'm with Clearly Energy as an intern, and this is the benchmarking deep dive meeting of the Maryland Building Energy Performance Standards for Local Government Cohort. And then if you want to go to the next slide, please, Becky. So our agenda for today, we're going to do a tour of the Google Classroom, go through Samuel Furio from Maryland Department of Energy is going to go through some more detailed reporting requirements for the Maryland Building Energy Performance Standards. And then, oh, I think we lost the slides. Thank you. And then we're going to hear from Sheena Oliver from Montgomery County and do a little bit of a spotlight from them and then just go over some resources and upcoming things. If you want to go to the next slide, please. And this project is supported by the U.S. Department of Energy under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Resilient and Efficient Codes implementation. So thank you to the DOE for this funding. And then, so thank you everybody for your feedback from the follow-up survey for the cohort. We did end up choosing Google Classrooms to be our communication channel for jurisdictions to be able to communicate. So I'm just going to go through a really quick tour of the classroom, and you will be receiving updates for that in this coming week with an invite. Let me just share my screen here. So this is the classroom homepage, and this will be where you're able to see announcements for upcoming meetings and also chat with other jurisdictions that are on the classroom as well. You can also make comments on any announcements or anyone else's posts. And then in this classwork section here, you'll be able to access some of the resources that we have for building owners, resources for you all, and then also meeting minutes, slides from previous meetings. And if there's anything else that people want resources on here, just let us know and we'll be happy to accommodate that. But you'll be receiving invites soon for the classroom. So I can just stop sharing here if you don't mind pulling up the slides again, Becky. And then I am going to turn it over to Sam.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, everyone. Again, if you're joining for the cohort for the first time, my name is Sam Furio. I'm the outreach coordinator for the building decarbonization team at the Maryland Department of the Environment. Our team's responsible for developing and implementing BEPS. So welcome back to those who have joined before. And for those of you that maybe this is your first time at a cohort meeting, welcome. If you guys want to, chat your names and what jurisdiction you're coming from, if this is your first time, that'd be great. So thanks for joining this benchmarking deep dive. I think, I'm going to just reiterate some of the detailed reporting requirements for MD's proposed building energy performance standards. This might be old information to some of you, but just want to set up you all with before we get too deep into this meeting with, a reminder of what's required for obligated parties under the proposed regulation. So we're going to go through and just talk about what's required, and then hopefully, the theme of the day is going to be open discussion. So feel free to interrupt, shout your answers out or shout your questions out. We want to start some discussion here today, and we have Sheena from Montgomery County who's very skilled in benchmarking. So Whatever questions are burning, about benchmarking, feel free to shout them out. Or if you've had a chance to review the benchmarking guidance we distributed, feel free to offer any feedback on that as well during today's session. So, um, all right, without further ado, let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, and I did just want to pitch. We released a one pager for BEPS. I want to see if I can you all see the PDF I'm sharing?
Yep.
Cool. So this is our new BEPS general awareness one pager that we're using for outreach sessions and events. And this will be uploaded to the Google Classroom. So when you all are, out at events, out in the public, people are talking about BEPS. This is a resource you can put them or point them to that talks about high level what the policy is, and what the proposed standards are and the timelines for meeting the requirements. So um, sign up for the Google Classroom, and helpful resources like this will be posted there that you can distribute. So um, let me just get my screen up. Oops. All right. Can you all see my screen now? Great. Okay, so just recap. This is pretty general BEPS background, but building owners as an obligated party under the proposed BEPS must annually report previous calendar year energy data, whole building energy consumption to the department annually. So, and they must submit this data to us via Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is the EPA's free benchmarking tool. So first reports for covered buildings are due June 1st, 2025, and that's going to comprise energy data from 2024. So come June 1st, 2025 next year, we want January 1st to December 31st of 2024 energy data. So when you submit this data to us, your building's covered, you report energy data to us, you make the submission via Energy Star Portfolio Manager. There's some data that can be excluded. That includes energy use associated with food service facilities that engage in commercial cooking and water heating, electric vehicle charging, parking, or energy use associated with parking lots, and emissions from required combustion equipment if that equipment is required to run on combustible fuels. So that would be backup generators that are required to run on combustible fuels by a state or federal regulation. So a little bit deeper into this, when it comes down to excluding this data from Portfolio Manager, if the if that energy use is sub-metered, you can report it in Portfolio Manager as a negative meter. So it takes your energy use for your building and then subtracts that meter out. If there is no sub-meter, then you can use a standard deduction that's highlighted in the regulations technical memorandum for these energy uses. So that'll be the process for excluding the data from Portfolio Manager for these topic areas. And there are additional exclusions such as cell towers, and you can find those in the technical memorandum as well. So how to get your data. So the majority of folks are going to be getting their data from their utility provider. So if your building is served by a large investor-owned utility, so utility that has greater than 40,000 customers, you'll request the data from the utility provider, and will be provided to you via their web services program. So it'll load straight into your Portfolio Manager account, and then you will share it with the department. If you're served by a smaller utility, less than 40,000 customers, or a non-investor owned utility, you will request the data and it can be provided to you via a spreadsheet, which then you will load into Portfolio Manager and submit to us. And again, if you have any questions, shout them out. We're happy to, open up some discussion on all this today.
I do see here in the chat, Sam, a question from Emily. Could you tell us which utilities fall into each of those buckets?
That's a good question. And that is, we'd be happy to provide a list afterwards. I think, we're working with electric and gas companies right now via a working group to iron out the data provision processes. But the large utilities such as, BG&E, Pepco, SMECO are all will be providing data via web services. But we can, provide a list down the line through after these working group processes are ironed out.
And then there's one more question here that just came in. Can you please detail what the parking exceptions are?
Yes, that I might have to pitch to Chris Menser, who is on the call. Chris is a technical specialist on our team. Chris, do you be able to highlight the parking exclusions from Portfolio Manager?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, so for parking, that's done in Portfolio Manager. So when you enter the parking information in Portfolio Manager, it automatically calculates it using their calculations. Now, if you have any detailed questions, I would point you towards the Portfolio Manager help section, because they have a lot of questions and resources for troubleshooting tips. So it's all done in the tool though. So hopefully that
This is
answers
Maddie.
your...
I'm the one that asked that question. What I was referring to is when you said that we can make parking and is an exception, right? Or not exception. What did you call it? Exclusions, right? Are like the parking lot lights of the parking part of that?
As far as the specific energy uses associated with parking,
Yeah.
I'd have to get back to you on the specific energy uses excluded with parking. Unless Chris, do you know which uses would be excluded from Portfolio Manager with parking?
I'm trying to look it up right as we're talking right now, but we can get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll circle back.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so that's how utilities will provide the data to you depending on their size. One second. So some requirements for utility providers for data provision. So again, the first benchmarking deadline is June 1st, 2025. So next year, utilities have 90 days to get you that data once you submit the request. But that's just for the first year. So just for next year's reporting requirement. Every year after 2025, utilities have 30 days to get you that data. So just know that next year we're working with utility providers. We're ironing out the data provision process. So there's going to be a 90-day time frame where they can get you the data, and then 30 days every year after that. So just for reference for next year, if you're aiming for this June 1st, 2025 deadline for reporting your data, that means the last day that you should be requesting your data given this 90-day window, is March 1st. So you can have your data in time to report to the department. So now there's another stipulation here for utility requirements. So if any of your buildings have tenants in them, you rent any of your space to a tenant. If you have less than 5 tenants, you will need to get a tenant's authorization for their energy use data, and the tenants have 30 days to provide that authorization so that you can get access to their information and load it into Portfolio Manager. So if you do have tenants in your building, you'd have to request by May 1st to ensure you have data in time to report. So once you get your data, quality control of that data is very important. So as far as setting up your Portfolio Manager profile, making sure that all your property characteristics are accurate is really important. So an accurate gross square footage of the property is going to make sure that the variables that Portfolio Manager is telling you are accurate for the building size. If you're taking in all the energy use for a large building, but you've underreported the square footage, then the your direct emissions or energy use intensity, which we intend to adopt in 2027, won't accurately reflect your building's footprint. So just make sure you're getting accurate square footage measurements. It's going to behoove you to do so and help you in the long run. And something that we've heard from other jurisdictions, and we just want to make sure we're starting off on the right foot, is making sure you get an accurate meter mapping for your building. So, the utility providers are required to tell you what meters are included in the data they give you, but you should be double checking that the meters in your building are included in that number. And so if there are multiple tenant meters, work with your utility to ensure they are all included. So, do a, basic check of your data. If it looks off, it doesn't look like there's enough, energy use for your building, or there's too much, meters are double counted. Getting an accurate meter mapping is very important. And then everyone must use Energy Star's data quality checker every year before submitting their data to the department. That is just a tool within the platform, and it combs through the data, tells you if there's an error, and you must use that and correct any errors before submitting to the department. Third-party verification is required every 5 years, starting in 2026 for calendar year 2025 data. And if you're notified of an error in your data by the department or by a third party, you have 30 days to correct that data and resubmit. So as far as down the road, when we've been benchmarking for a few years, it's important that and it's required to hold on to your records for a period of no less than 5 years. The department and the third-party verifiers will need access to those records. And then new construction, if you are, planning for new buildings, the requirements for new construction when it comes to benchmarking are they must start benchmarking in the first calendar year after occupancy. And that first report for new construction must be third-party verified. So a little different in how, existing buildings need to benchmark, but new construction needs to have that first report verified. So I think that's it for me. We'll, circle up on some of those questions, but just want to thank you again for being here, and I'll pass it off to Sheena if there are no other questions from anyone. Open it up to the room real quick.
I do see one just came in from Jason. It says, as a smaller jurisdiction with minimal internal resources, what third-party options are available to manage this program?
That's a good question. That I think we can point you to some of our upcoming working groups, benchmarking and reporting working groups that are specifically for MD BEPS, and talking more about the requirements and the processes, and third-party verification timelines as far as, and also the requirements for third-party verifiers. And so I think that will be discussed in upcoming working groups. But we'd also point you to the Clean Buildings Hub that's being developed and stood up by Maryland Energy Administration, that's working to provide vendor information for for building owners that need to comply. So, but we're also, the Clean Buildings Hub is, being stood up and developed using feedback from the public. So if you have, thoughts on resources that would be helpful for you for compliance, please, submit them to us, submit them to the cohort, or, or to the Clean Buildings Hub. It's very useful for us. Any other questions right now? If not, we can move it along to Sheena. All right, I'll
Right.
pass it to Sheena.
There, you're sharing the slides, right?
I think Becky is sharing those.
Oh. Whenever you're ready, Becky. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me pretty well. I don't know if you can hear outside, but if every couple minutes somebody's coming by to do the lawn, so hopefully that doesn't get caught up in the background. My name is Sheena. I work for Montgomery County DEP. That's our Department of Environmental Protection, and I'm the multifamily program manager. So I help all of the properties that within our county that have to comply with our county BEPS regulation. And there will be a lot of them that also have to comply with the state, as well as some that don't have to comply with the state that will comply with the state as well. I mean, that don't have to comply with the county that will have to comply with the state. Um, I just want to also just emphasize the fact that all the information I'm going to really give is in regard to our stakeholders that have to comply, not specifically just about our county buildings that have to comply, since that is done by a person within our, I think our DGS department, and then they have third party to assist with gross floor area calculations. Becky, you can go to the next slide. So just a little bit of background. Our benchmarking ordinance was enacted in 2014, and then it was updated in 2022. It covers commercial and multifamily buildings that are 25,000 gross square feet and larger. We also use Energy Star Portfolio Manager to collect the data, just as the state's going to be. It requires data to be submitted to the county by June 1 of each year for public disclosure. We have data verification that's required every 3 years. So the first year that a property reports, they have to do data verification, and then every 3 years from that point forward. There's two BEPS compliance options that we have. We have the performance pathway, where a building is going to meet the energy use intensity target by the dates that are subscribed, or they're going to be implementing a building performance improvement plan, which is a plan to be able to meet the targets, and it's going to give them more time to do so. Next slide. So our cover buildings were all grouped by type and size, and that's going to determine when they were required to start benchmarking. So our last group of buildings, which were basically all the smaller multifamily buildings, although some of them are the garden style communities for the most part, actually, in group 5, they just started reporting, and their deadline was June 1st of this year. So this just gives this chart we share with everybody when we do our own presentations, but it just shows when properties of different groups had to comply, what time frame is going to establish their baseline, what their interim target's going to be, and what their final target, well, interim target deadline, and then the final target deadline dates are. Next slide. So since we have all these years of data already completed, we just wanted to kind of show everybody how our compliance has been going. Of course, with a lot of the buildings, once they started, it was a little slower, of course, because it's also the issue of notification, making sure we have the accurate contact information for the properties to make sure that they're getting the documentation that they need in order to do the report. And then with our smaller property groups, so when I say that, I mean group 3 and group 5 are the ones that seem to be taking a little bit longer. And that's just basically because these are the smaller business owners. We have group 3, it's built commercial buildings up to 25,000 gross square feet or 25,000 gross square feet and larger. And therefore it's a lot of like mom and pops that are owning shopping strips, retail centers, small restaurants, things of that nature, that are having to report. And so they don't have the resources to do it. And by resources, I primarily mean time when it comes to benchmarking, because benchmarking is free for the most part, unless you can't do it yourself and you have to pay somebody to do it. And then also for that gross floor area verification, that is what most people end up having to pay for. And it's the same thing with group 5. Group 5 brought on residential buildings or multifamily buildings, I should say, that are 25,000 gross square feet up to 250,000 gross square feet. But right now we're sitting at an 86% compliance rate. And that was that's going to be as of October 1 at this point. But, we're doing pretty good along the way. It's, some buildings are taking a lot longer to get with the flow, but as to be expected. Next slide. So some of our challenges and this slide, I don't have anything on because there's a lot to put in here. And I just didn't want to overflow anybody with information. So I'd rather just kind of talk through it. So some of the challenges we've had with benchmarking is locating accurate contact information for properties, which would be also inclusive of the property address. And this is the small businesses, the small multifamily property owners, and condo associations specifically that have been really difficult to find the contact information. We've had to work between SDAT information, the business listings, websites in some cases in order to find accurate contact information for properties. But it's very, very important to make sure that they're getting at least our notice of non-compliance that we send, our notice of violation, and then finally the citations. Like, they have to be delivered. So we need to make sure that address is correct. Another challenge we've had was properties obtaining the gross floor area verification. A lot of them have chose to just kind of go with what we provide as the estimated gross floor area. And we have to remind them that this is based off of tax records. And so it is highly likely that it is not correct. And so they need to actually find their documents that are showing their original drawings if they can, or condos can actually go to a website called plats.net and they can pull their original drawings, like all the plans, to see and get a good idea of what their gross floor area is. Sometimes it's flat out listed, and other times it just takes a lot of calculating. Another challenge is going to be with the mixed use properties. We have them improperly setting up their property types within Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Just also classifying the mixed use buildings for us. We had our GIS team pull information, and what we found actually very recently in this reporting cycle is when we really started to see that, where we were having multiple building IDs for a building, and we're sending notifications to all of these contacts for these different building IDs, and come to find out there's all these different layers on top of each other. So we're seeing the commercial space on the first floor. We're seeing the residential space upstairs. We're seeing the original ownership prior to the finish of construction in there as well. So it's kind of, we're having to just get everything, notify everybody to figure out who is actually owning the building. So that's been a little challenging, but I mean, you get through it. It's just, it takes a little bit of work. Third-party benchmarkers failing to obtain necessary information from the properties that they're benchmarking for. I put this in here because what we found specifically with the Group 5 reports, that we have to go back and ask the third-party benchmarkers, how is this property metered? Because we're trying to figure out, we're trying to establish what makes that property individual buildings that need to report individually, or a garden style community where all the buildings have to report as one. And they don't know that information. They have to go back to the client and ask them these questions, and these are things that they should know before they start benchmarking. And it's not necessarily that they're not asking the correct questions, but a lot of them are having their contractor who's doing this benchmarking for them, they're giving the property owner or the management team, whatever, a form to complete and answer all these questions. And then they don't answer certain questions and they still go about doing the report. And then we look at it and we're like, why are you reporting this whole property as one building? um, how is this structured as far as the utility and mechanical equipment? And then we start breaking it down. Okay, well, no, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Or a property trying to report 7 individual buildings, all of them are 25,000 gross square feet or larger, and they really should report each of them individually. Um, New construction and demolition, that just like I said with the mixed use properties, the new construction, sometimes we can't see it. Like we don't, like we can't tell necessarily what's going on with the property, and that's because we're relying on maps. So sometimes maps, well, all the maps usually show a different progress when it comes to a construction project. And so we'll have to reach out just to make sure, if they're done. Um, and we do have the GIS team who does pull permits to see when properties have their use and occupancy to determine when they're actually open. And the same thing kind of goes with a demo. If a building is going to be demolished or if it's just inoperable at the time, um, the contact information that may be in SStat or in the business listing isn't correct, or there's nobody to answer there. So it takes a lot of run around to figure out who should be the person that we're contacting about that building. Same thing, well, ownership and management fears regarding the process. That's one that we've definitely been able to overcome because a lot of them, especially the small business owners and the multifamily property managers, they just, a lot of them wear multiple hats. They have a lot of things to do. So when they see oh, I have to comply with another law, it's immediately puffing and puffing. But one of the things that we've done is started doing one-on-one sessions. And so we've been able to calm a lot of their fears. And it's helped a lot. Like I think it's actually contributed to a lot of our buildings getting through the process is just, us talking to them and letting them know, yes, you have all these steps. However, this takes 5 minutes. This takes 2 minutes. This takes an hour. But you know what? The other processes take 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's not so bad. And then the final challenge we'll talk about is obtaining data from the utilities, especially Washington Gas. We've been able to overcome this a little bit after we've spoken to Washington Gas ourselves. And we have a really good working relationship with them now, but they want all of the meter numbers. And when you have commercial spaces, let's say where the meters are internal to the actual rented space, or you have multifamily properties where the gas meter is inside of the unit, which is very common, it's hard. It's not as hard on the commercial side. I did commercial management, so I don't think it's as hard. However, a lot of them say that it is. Um, multifamily, it is quite difficult, even though it doesn't have to be. And so we've worked it out with them where, if a property is able to give us a certain amount of information, they pass it along to us and we pass that along to Washington Gas and request the meter numbers for the property. That's really just multifamily properties. And that has helped significantly with us being able to get compliance rates up. Did anybody have any questions about those before I move on to some of the benefits and some lessons that we've learned?
I had a question, if I can do it virtually, or would you rather do a chat?
It's up to you. I see a couple in chat, but you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, does Montgomery County, as part of their building permit process, are you gonna be requiring any of those buildings to comply upfront with this BEPS standard, or are you dealing with that after the fact, after the UNO's issued?
Emily is my supervisor. She's on. She probably can better answer that. I think I know the answer to that question, but Emily, if you want to chime in on that one.
Yeah, I can jump in. So at least at the county, and I would imagine the state is the same. So any new building is going to go through the, typical building permitting process, following the building codes. And then once they are constructed, they will begin benchmarking after 1 full year of occupancy, and then kind of subsequently have to meet the building performance standards. So I think how building codes are heading, at least again in the county, they are moving towards all electric new construction. The energy code keeps tightening every few years. So those new buildings, should be fairly well primed to comply with like a site energy use intensity standard, kind of eventually, I think, with the direct emission standard, but it's definitely something that, newly designed buildings are going to have to keep an eye out for, kind of in addition to current building code. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, and I appreciate that, because that's my concern, is that, where you have people building buildings to this size to a state adopted standard, and they really don't comply with the BEPS, and then we're gonna, after the fact, I guess, send them a letter saying they need to comply with the BEPS, so it kind of seems counterproductive to not build that in on the code side for new structures. That way, the owners are basically in compliance up front with the fossil fuel standards and things like that. So I'm just struggling with that a little bit. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and at least for us, we've been trying to figure out. We're still kind of in the same boat as MDE. Like our regulations are still being considered at county council, but definitely, I've thought, hey, how can we work with our Department of Permitting Services so that when folks are bringing plans and constructing new buildings, it's not like required in the code to build your building, but it is certainly something that people should be aware of, because, right, you don't want to construct a building and it's, obsolete or facing additional requirements in a few years. So, I think that's more of an education thing right now, and at least until the codes sort of really advance, but for sure, something to think about.
I would just say, just because I know we have MDE on here, if they can just maybe even work with the architectural board at the state level to get information out to them, so they, as they're designing these buildings, they know that this is kind of an outlier thing that's out there to be aware of.
And MBIA they're active in terms of BEPS compliance. So at least owners that are within that trade network, they're aware, as well as AOBA, they're very tapped in. So at least those owners and construction companies are aware of what's going on. The rest of them are the ones who are kind of in the dark. And that's not that there's a little bit, there's a lot of those, I'm sure. Were there any other questions? I do see one in the chat about our penalty, and my other colleague Ian already answered that. So I'll just go ahead and move on to some of the good things about benchmarking. And by all means, if I talk too fast and somebody misses something.
Can I help you?
Oh, Louisa, you're unmuted. Thank you. If you have any questions and or if I'm talking too fast, just let me know. It is something I'm learning to be slower at in this job. So some of the benefits, we have a lot better insight into the types of buildings within our county now, which, looking at a building, you think one thing, But when we started benchmarking, we really get to delve in and see what's going on, what the majority of our building structures are, the mechanical setups and things of that nature, even down to like certain ages and styles of buildings. Like you kind of get to the point where you know this type of property is going to have this type of mechanical equipment and therefore this type of utility setup. So we need to talk to them because something's not right about their benchmarking report. Um, our relationships and contacts with building owners and energy service providers are allowing us to provide follow-up and share resources and et cetera between ourselves as well as between the different departments and different companies and residents. And that's actually benefited us a lot in our department, our division really, because yeah, we're just great as far as communication is concerned. We are getting data to help target outreach poor performing buildings under resource buildings covered by the law by property type and owner type. So we're working, we're tapped in terms of IRA funding, different grants that are out there, and trying to make sure that we learn about these so that we can pass along that information to the buildings that are at least that are complying with BEPS as additional resources for them when it comes to benchmarking, as well as any work that they're going to do as a result of their final EUI targets. Um, we've learned challenges that many buildings face, such as the inadequate staffing, resources, and lack of time, which is same thing also. Well, I can't say that that's just the smaller buildings because that does exist with large properties. It does exist in terms of larger companies as well. They want the property managers to do everything, and they just don't have the time, and they, in some cases, have ended up being cited as a result. So. Um, we have collaboration between our departments, so we're breaking down silos within Montgomery County government, working with DHCA to get contact information for the condos in the county, and to get information out there about BEPS, working kind of in tandem when it came to our rent stabilization law and how it was going to affect buildings that have to comply with BEPS, and just sitting down and just having those conversations to make sure that although affordable housing is super important to maintain in the county, we're also have this goal of lowering greenhouse gas emissions and increasing energy efficiency throughout our buildings. So making sure one isn't overly stepping on the foot of the other. We've introduced a separate benchmarking portal in 2024. So now buildings are not just sharing their building with us, an Energy Star portfolio manager, and we see the report from there. We also created what's called the Montgomery County Energy Benchmarking Portal. And in there, that's where buildings simply just go to submit their report, their extension, their exemption request. They can make corrections to their previous reports. And we've also with that portal have been able to restrict multiple people from claiming a building and submitting multiple reports for a building. So that's been very helpful because you wouldn't think that that would necessarily be an issue. Maybe you have more of an issue of buildings not complying, but we actually do have the issue of too many people trying to comply for a building, which I guess is a good problem to have. Um, Properties are thinking more about the future and they're planning not to fail, but instead they're planning not to fail instead of just failing to plan. So when they have to do their mechanical replacements, water heaters, HVAC units, things of that nature, they're coming to us in some cases and saying, hey, look, I know I have to comply with this benchmarking law. And then for some of them, I also know I have to comply with the state. What should I do? So they're starting to think about it instead of the water heater needing to be replaced yesterday and it gets replaced today. And they spend a lot of money because they don't have a choice because it's an emergency. So they're starting to really think about those things, which is something they have not always done in all cases. Some properties and some owners do, but not always. And then, of course, we've established a lot of great relationships and collaboration between the utilities, um, PEPCO, and we have almost all of our buildings that have to comply have PEPCO for electricity. Everyone has Washington Gas for gas, but we do have some properties that have BGE for electric, and some that also have Potomac Edison. Some of the things that we've learned, does anybody have any questions? You guys want me to keep going, or you need somebody else to jump on after me?
It looks like there is one question in the chat I see. This one's for MDE. So, if Sam, if you want to answer this one, the question is from Emily. It says, is there an annual disclosure requirement as part of the law where jurisdictions could see benchmarking data about buildings in those jurisdictions?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I was actually just typing up a response to that one. So, but it's actually, it's easier to say than to type because a little long-winded. But yeah, so there is a disclosure portion in the proposed regulations technical memorandum that notifies that some of the data that is collected but due to the BEPS regulation will be displayed on the BEPS website. So, no personally identifiable information will be displayed, but some of the basic building information and energy performance metrics may be displayed on the BEPS website. So that would be, the name of the property, the address, the direct emissions, the, energy use intensity, if that, as we intend to adopt that in 2027. And then, indication of whether the building's in compliance or not with, that phase of the regulation. So there is a disclosure piece in the technical memorandum under benchmarking, and that'll be available on the BEPS website. So, and that can be filtered by address, and, aligned with the jurisdiction that way.
So I'm just going to go over just a couple other things. So some of the things that we've learned, and I've also touched on these already, is that you have to use multiple sources in order to get the accurate information for the properties, because and sometimes they're not all the same. So you kind of have to just cast this wide net and send documentation to all of the addresses that are there. One of them is going to bite and be correct. Buildings are needing resources even just to do the simplest thing as benchmark. And that's not necessarily for them to do the entire thing. Sometimes it's simply just the gross floor area calculation, but that is a part of benchmarking. So it's kind of in between in terms of what properties are needing. Buildings that are not formally covered, um, are likely not to self-identify. So I know that I was watching something or reading something the other day, and it was saying that it's all buildings that are 35 for Maryland BEPS, that all buildings 35,000 gross square feet or larger must comply. It's the building's owner's responsibility to make sure that they comply, even if they don't receive notification. And we've kind of had ours is basically the same way, but it's kind of been this mixed bag. It's actually funny because it's usually the utility companies that are doing the third party billing. So they're doing either RUB billing services for a building, or they're doing sub meters. They are reaching out like crazy and kind of telling on the buildings that haven't complied, and we didn't even have on the list. So sometimes it's that no, the property really does not need to be covered, and our thought that it didn't need to be was correct. And there's other times where that's not right, where yes, they definitely should have been included. We don't know how the heck we missed them, but okay, now that building has to comply. So yeah, if it's not the building itself, the owners, no, they've never told on themselves. It's always been that third party company doing the utility bills for them, which has been good. It's added a lot to our inventory, but it's also helped us to remove things that didn't need to be there as well. Annual outreach and enforcement are key. Prior to this year, reminder letters weren't going out to buildings that had already reported. And after starting to do that this year, we've seen an increase in how early buildings started to comply with the law and started to submit their reports. So if you, after that first year, it's important, we think, because we've seen it has benefited, just to remind properties, just keeping in mind that they're busy. You know, a lot of things are going on. They have a lot of other things to comply with. And as for buildings within our county, they have plenty of things that are county required reports they have to submit, as well as things they have to submit to the state. So it just kind of gets lost in their everyday movement. So just to send them a gentle reminder has been helpful. As the smaller buildings, especially anything less than 50,000 gross square feet, are harder to reach. So same thing, just going with checking multiple sources for confirmation of what that contact information is. When you get a letter back in the mail because it's undeliverable or it was returned for return service or whatever it comes back as, just to keep trying to send out that notification to the different contacts until you get the correct one. Don't give out too many extensions. Properties are going to kick the can down the road as long as they can in most cases, and they do. Um, have to follow up regarding the status often and provide them with final deadlines. So if they have an extension and they put in another one, some of them, I have some that have had 4 extensions, and just kind of getting to a point of a firm date, unless it has something to do with the utilities and you can tell, you know, that they've actually been working with the utilities. Um, that's really the only time you should give them that extension, because otherwise it's because the property is either being too slow in providing benchmarking information to the third party benchmarking company, or they're just not doing what they're supposed to do at all. And if you keep letting them do it, they're going to do that. Um, the housing providers, most specifically HOC, you should send the documents to the company that manages the properties. Don't send it to the housing provider, or send it in tandem. Send it to the management company and to the housing provider. We have all of the properties that are HOC owned or managed. The notifications that were sent to them were not responded to at all. And once we figured out who those management companies are and sent it to them, that's when we started to get movement. So I know, at least in like PG County, their housing department is also HOC. I don't know about the rest of the state, but just keep that in mind, at least with HOC here, which I would think HOC in PG County is going to be exactly the same. You're not going to get any traction. You're going to have to figure out who that management company is and send documents to them instead. And the last thing I'll kind of hit on is the meet properties where they are. As a result of us offering one-on-one sessions, hosting webinars, and providing reliable email contacts and phone numbers, just being there for the properties has really proven a lot to us. It has done a lot for us, and it has definitely gotten us a lot of accolades from properties who have to comply, even ones that are doing terribly, because at the end of the day, we're still there to provide our support and lend our ear to them. And I'll just kind of stop there because I see we're at 11:55. And I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Thank you so much, Sheena. It's great to hear your insights since you all have gotten the chance to learn the ropes. And I think, Becky, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll turn it over to Andy, who's just going to go over a few resources and some upcoming meetings.
Yeah, so just to close us out, we've gathered some resources together that should help you all navigate Energy Star Portfolio Manager in this benchmarking process. EPA has a ton of trainings and guides and resources on how to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So we gathered a bunch of relevant ones together in one place that should be really useful to you. But to start, I would point your attention to the first few bullets that are just like overviews of Portfolio Manager, and how to set up your account and your property. And then the fourth bullet is utilities providing energy data for benchmarking. And Becky, if you just go to the next slide, we listed all the contact information for the major utilities in Maryland. And this is the contact information specifically for the benchmarking arm of the utilities. So having this contact information, if you have questions about how the process works, this would all be quite useful to you. Thanks, Sheena, for the shout out to the ESPM resources. Yes, there are videos and trainings and things you can watch, how-to guides and stuff like that. I think that's it for on the resources side of things that we wanted to chat about. And on the next slide, there are some upcoming meetings that Sam is going to walk us through.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so we have, if you're wanting to keep going with all the benchmarking reporting details, we have a second reporting working group for, for the public through MDE that is on Tuesday, October 15th from 1 to 2. I'm going to drop a sign up link in the chat right now. So we had our first session a couple weeks ago. We released the benchmarking guide, which we, released to the public for feedback. And so if you guys had a chance to read that, we really encourage, any feedback on that. There's a form where you can provide your thoughts, and that form will close on October 1st. So if you're interested in diving into that and giving us your thoughts, that'd be great. So second session is on Tuesday, October 15th. Then we're going to have a campus compliance working group that could be beneficial for you all, depending on your building layouts and mechanical systems. If you meet certain eligibility requirements, that pathway for campus compliance might open up for you. So that could be a useful one to join. That's on October 22nd at 1 p.m. And then specifically for the cohort, and we have 2 more sessions scheduled currently. That is a decarbonization planning task order with Maryland Department of General Services. That's on October 25th at 10 a.m. This kind of hits back at Jason, your feedback on making sure the state is aware about new construction, and the Department of General Services is spearheading the decarbonization planning for state facilities, and so I think that'd be a great one to jump in on. Really beneficial for everyone. And then we also have a cohort meeting specifically for commercial building audits on November 7th. So feel free to sign up via the links that Clara sent out, and for specifically for MDE's sessions, you can sign up via that form I just dropped in the chat.
And Sam, before we jump off, because we are at 12 now, you mentioned earlier to me that MDE was looking for some people to help test out the sharing of data across on Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Do you just want to give like a announcement about
Sure.
that?
Yeah. So and Chris, if you're still on, he might be able to provide some more insight. But our MDE Portfolio Manager account is open and active. And so, if you want to start benchmarking using your 2023 calendar year data, start practicing and seeing how the tool works and how the sharing process with MDE, we're here to help, and you can submit your data to us now, and just get things set up for next year. So we're very open to that, and want to support you all in your benchmarking needs. So Chris, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but Chris is on our data side, so he'd be receiving your data request. But we hope you can submit to us and start practicing.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add, Sam, but thank you for bringing that up, Andy, and we look forward to reviewing your data when it comes in.
Cool. Becky, let's go off to the last slide. It's just a thank you slide. Thank you all for attending the cohort meeting today. we will be sharing the slides and the recording with you all after. We've got contact information for Clearly Energy and Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, who have been organizing the cohort meetings, and of course our partners at MDE and the Clean Buildings Hub. Yeah, that's it for today. Sam, thanks for sharing the future meetings. And the next cohort meeting will be on the 25th, and then again on